in the period prior to great financial crisis this time around, people are talking about great moderation. This environment created the confidence, overconfidence, and complacency. Also, what we missed is the importance of credit or leverage. Of course, people cannot identify, people can spot, detect the formation of bubble. It's a difficult job. But if we find the combination of rapid rise in asset prices, rapid rise in credit over leverage, and rapid rise in investment ratio, then there's a good reason that the bubble is creating. And once bubble was created, the adjustment is quite painful, and also adjustment takes a longer time. So what is needed is to prevent the formation of bubble. There's no textbook answer to avoiding the creation of bubble. But nonetheless, we have to be prudent about macroeconomic policy in the situation when the economic performance are very good. And this is one of the lessons. Thank you.
Governor Kim?
Yes, thank you very much for some of the comments and questions. They are all important. And let me begin by answering a relatively easier question. The first one was about the first question that I'd like to address is the impact of the investment of Asian central banks and others in the bond markets of Korea and others, whether that can be a source of additional vulnerability. My answer is no. My answer is that on the contrary to expectations, those investments in bond markets actually helped stabilize the capital market. Take the case of 2008, when the crisis broke out, when deleveraging by European banks took place. Several of the capital markets of Asian countries, particularly Korean capital market, became very much volatile. But this time, even if the deleveraging started again, but as other Asian and other central banks invested in the bond market of Korea, for example, our market has remained fairly stable. So I don't think it's a matter of vulnerability. And furthermore, the sources of the funds are of the long-term nature rather than short-term nature. So it helped stabilize the capital market. The question regarding the lessons, the question was whether we can give any lessons to Europeans rather than what we learned from European crisis. Well, I don't want to be complacent of giving lessons to Europeans. We all know that per capita incomes of European countries are substantially higher than those of Asians. And of course, we overcame the crisis much quickly. In the late 1990s, many Asian countries experienced a crisis at the time. And of course, we have done a lot to restructure our economies. But we did because our economy was relatively less developed than those of European economies. And furthermore, at the time, the whole sentiment was that it was the crisis broke out mainly because of the mistakes of our domestic economic management. There were some structural deficiencies, and at the time, several sources of crisis were coded by the IMF and others. At the time, the economy was overheated, and the macroeconomic management was not appropriate. and the financial supervision was lax, and furthermore, foreign exchange rate system was rigid because several countries at the time adopted fixed exchange rate system. And so anyway, a lot of blames were on us, not on the others. So what we did was that we have done our best to restructure. Take the case of Korea, we introduced 4 structural reforms, including financial sector reform, corporate sector reform, public sector reform, and even labor sector reform. So with those reforms, at the time, of course, many Western journalists said that the crisis in Asia was a disguised blessing for those countries, because that was the moment of restructuring. I think in the previous session, one of the speakers said that, no, it was not the speaker, the chairman of the previous session, that unless you face a crisis, you usually don't move. It was you or others. Some in the session said. So at the time, we just took it as a blessing. So no Asian economy ever dared proposing the so-called haircut. We assumed that we are obliged to pay back all the debts we owed. But for the case of European crisis, the first word that we heard was, oh, haircut. And so that was a major difference between the two. But I don't dare to provide any advices, because their per capita incomes are even higher than that of Korea. But as I said, Mr. Cheke in the previous session said the importance of culture. Anyway, all the culture is different, and the circumstances are different. And as Governor Shirakawa said, all crises are different in many nature. So I don't think there is any single or the so-called one-size-fits-all type of prescription to cure the crisis. I do hope that Europeans will come up with a solution to the current crisis. And of course, we are all all of our economies are very closely related with China, and there is a great impact of Chinese economy on our domestic economies, as Chairman Hale mentioned in his remarks. Of course, China is the #1 trading partner for Japan, but clearly China is our #1 trading partner for Korea. 21% of Japanese exports goes to China, but 24.5, nearly 25% of Korean exports goes to China. So we are very much affected, but the way we try to cope with such a situation is to diversify our trade with the rest of the world. As some of you may know, Korea is one of the probably, if not the only, one of the few countries which has free trade agreements with both the United States and European Union. And actually what we found was that those actually helped us overcoming the problems that occurred due to the slowdown of the Chinese economy. The first question was a little difficult to answer. Yes, in 2010, Korea chaired G20, and at that time, global rebalancing attracted the most attention. So that was, if not #1, one of the most important agendas for the IMF. And around 2 years ago, it was probably the first time that the word currency war emerged. And at the G20 meeting, which took place in Korea around October of 2010, finance ministers and central bank governors gathered together to discuss that issue. And so we somehow understood the importance of finding a way to deal with such a case, so that rather than using the word currency war, we came up with a conclusion that we should somehow find a way to achieve global rebalancing. And of course, foreign exchange rate can be one of the more important variables, but that was not the only variable in determining global rebalancing. And the IMF at that time introduced a certain type of criteria, and many countries then have made efforts to comply with the requirements given by that. But there, what I'd like to, of course, 4% of current account surplus was too high, and but as I said, there was a series of indicators and guidelines to achieve global rebalancing. Here, I'd like to add one personal note. I think it is not possible to correct the disequilibrium or imbalances by not moving. Correcting something without moving seems to me mission impossible. So the way to correct the mismatches or disequilibrium is through growing. So you have to move from one to the other. And by growing, you can make certain adjustments. And I'm sorry that I take too much of time, but if I say one more word, so what matters most is that we should find a growing region. This is also related to the lessons or to the experiences that we had in the late 1990s. Yes, all Asian countries have done a lot to restructure, but at the time we were able to overcome the crisis partly because we succeeded in restructuring, but partly because at the time European and United States economies grew. So we had a places to export our goods, but the current problem is that there is no growing region. And we discussed the Chiang Mai initiative issues today, and I think one of the reasons is that we Asians and other emerging economies now understand that unless those emerging economies continue to grow, probably Europeans may not find any place to export their goods, so they may not find a way to get out of the crisis. So the key, this is a global issue, not a local issue. The key global issue is to find a growing region. And I guess emerging economies in Asia and in Latin America and others should play such a role. And in doing so, a precondition is that a certain type of global financial safety net is secured. Because unless such a financial safety net is secured, these emerging economies will not move from export-oriented growth strategy to domestic demand-driven growth. Because in case they move, they are likely to face all kinds of current account and capital liberalization problems. So they have to move in that direction, but at the same time, we have to find a way to provide certain safety net to those countries. Thank you.
Mr. Sugimoto, do you want to make any comments on the questions?
I'd like to answer only just one question concerning bond market in Asia. The so-called ABMI, ABMI, Asian Bond Market Initiative, was started 2003, I think. And after that, according to the statistic in my hand, the bond market of the Asian currencies has been increased from 1,000 billion US dollars 2002 to more than 5,000 billion US dollars in 2011. I think it is not sufficient for the development of the Asian bond market. And I think the ASEAN plus 3 financial minister meeting agreed upon the new roadmap in May this year. And some effort must be developed, including the liberalization of the capital account, especially in China. But also, private sector must make greater effort to develop the Asian bond market. Thank you.
Okay, it's now 6:30, so we will adjourn this panel. So, one more question? Okay. I'm told by Randy we have time for one more question. If there's no volunteers, I'll finish up with a question. During the last 3 years, China's been aggressively promoting the role of the RMB as a trading currency. And a few countries, such as Nigeria and Malaysia, have announced they now intend to hold the RMB as a reserve currency. Given these trends, given the fact that China's liberalizing its financial system, I'd like to ask our panelists, do you believe the RMB in 10 years could be an important regional reserve currency? Mr. Kim?
Me? Well, as I said to you, China is our #1 trading partner, and we currently maintain relatively large amount of currency swap, and we are discussing the ways to utilize the currency swaps. And needless to say, the first thing that comes to anybody's mind is how to use the local currencies. What that means is that either Chinese yuan or Korean won for trade settlements. And in doing so, as what you indicated was whether the effort of a Chinese government to internationalize Chinese yuan would succeed. And I guess what I proposed was probably the first step to strengthen the effort. And they are moving in that direction. And whether it's just not a matter of holding their reserve currencies, but the question whether Chinese yuan can be an international currency or key currency will depend upon whether their capital account liberalization efforts will proceed rather quickly. And I don't dare to bet on the date, but I'm sure that they will move in that direction. And I don't know whether 10 years will be the right time, but as I said, they are moving in that direction. Yeah.
Would any other panelists like to comment? Mr. Shirakawa?
Yes, it depends upon the definition of reserve currency. You said whether renminbi could become one of the reserve currency. According to the statistics by IMF, the #1 is dollar, followed by euro, followed by Japanese yen. So in that sense, Japanese yen is a third reserve currency. But the reserve currency is sort of lingua franca, like English. The condition for the reserve currency is several. One is size of economy is big. In this respect, the Chinese economy is the second largest economy already. The second criteria is well-developed financial market. And China is now in the process of developing financial market. But both in order for country to have well-developed market, the well-designed supervision and regulation are prerequisite. So it's up to this point. And the third is network. And network is, by definition, not created instantaneously. And the fourth is inertia. So I cannot present a precise answer to the question, but the issue is size of economy, well-developed market, network, and inertia. Thank you.
Mr. Sugimoto?
First of all, transaction in goods and services must be prosecuted in, for example, renminbi. It's a background of the currency utilization. So I think, first of all, it is necessary to prosecute the transaction in the terms of renminbi. then some kind of the capital control must be removed. That's a predicate for the reserve currency for the renminbi.